Hi, I'm Lapien and welcome to my studio. I guess I started around 12 years ago, but I started playing guitar. And I started I guess like a lot of people start with at least back in early 2000s with tape, like a cassette recorder. And recording like guitars and playing along with it. So that's basically 2-track, and then recording that again, and then the recording gets sloppier and sloppier. And then I slowly, after a couple of years later, I started getting more into electronics and stuff. It started with layering guitars and bass guitars and sometimes some vocals and stuff like that. And it developed from there. First release must have been 2012, I think, on Blick on English label. It was called Anver EP. It was my first EP, solo EP as Lapien, with remixes by Fred and Comforts. And then I also got after that, the collaboration with Fred started. So that's really where it took off for me. And I also started taking myself a bit more seriously as a producer, I guess. Yeah, I think the first time you get your music on vinyl is something special, you know. I think for the first time you have that, you get it in the mail and you put the needle on. That's a special moment. I started with guitar, so then it's always kind of hardware based, and then you're messing around with tapes. And for me, it's important to be able to touch stuff, it's not real unless you can touch it or something. So the tactile aspect for me is very important. I don't know, kind of depending on your personality type. I'm not a programmer. I wouldn't go dive into programming some software or something. But for me, it works best if I have all the controls right here, and I can just, as you see, everything is kind of based around me. I can reach everything, and I can just jam. So. Yeah, I started buying more and more analog synths and gear for processing, and that kind of shaped my sound as well. I guess there's always 1,000 things you would still like to buy, definitely. And I think every piece I buy, I also really use a lot. So, but I definitely want to soon get a good sampler, preferably SP1200 or something really gritty and lo-fi. Because I use now a lot of, I have a tube equalizer to kind of color my sounds, basically. And I think for house, SP1200 or MPC, it's really nice to get this grittiness, and a punch. So. And there's never a more inspired moment than the first time you get your synth into the studio, you connect it. And then, there's some sounds in there, you start to tweak with them, and then the first track you make, it's usually, or at least for me, one of the most inspiring and original things you will do with that scene, because it's something so new, And it must have been amazing being the first person to have an 808, for example, Because me, if I have it here for the first time, it's super inspiring, but them, they had it for the first time. Anyone ever had it. So I guess you have that with a small piece of equipment in a very small version, with a new piece of equipment in your studio. Well, I bought this one quite recently, Uno 6, and I use it quite a lot for all the chords and stuff. And also, it's not only about buying new equipment, but there's also just new ways of processing and new ways of using sounds and samples. And I've used a lot of percussion elements that I found wherever on record or just sound recordings I found online. And I sampled them, and I guess it's more of a production technique that's different than before, and that kind of make these sound tracks and make them fit together as well. Nothing is really preconceived, actually, at least not for me. Well, in this case, there is there are some vocal things that I might be cleaning my house and listening to a record, and then I hear a little part of a record, and I'm like, well, fuck, I can use that. And then I remember that, or I record it, and then I go into the studio, and then that's a different way of working, because you have to fit everything around the vocal, because that's the leading part. But generally, I just get into the studio and I start with whatever inspires me. and I take it from there, and usually the track, the basic structure of the track and all the elements are there in 1.5, 2 hours, and then I render it, and after I continue working on it. But it's not that before I'm thinking like, oh, I'm gonna make something like that. That's also why I have way too many different projects and aliases, and also a lot of stuff that's not released that's still on my computer that I'm like, just because I don't really necessarily think like, okay, I'm gonna make a track like that now, you know? And sometimes just and like a wave track comes out or whatever. But it keeps it fresh, you know? And I think everyone that works as a freelancer knows what I'm talking about, and especially if you're doing music, because besides the fact that you're on your own a lot of time, it's also quite alienating, the activity, you know? Because you're sitting like basically for 8 hours in quite a dark room, and you're listening to repetitive music, and it's also very personal. So if it goes well, you can come out and you're super hyped and you're totally. But if it doesn't go well, it's also, you might start working on a mix in the morning, and at the end of the day you realize that you made it worse, you know? And that's just horrible. And that also, you take that into your personal life. So for me, it helps to kind of have like, to balance it out with something really social. So I have to go to work at 5. Before that I sit here, and sometimes, you know, I feel kind of strange or something, and I go there, and then within half an hour I talk to everyone, and I kind of become like a normal human being again. There's like technical listening and like recreational listening. And you have to try to create a situation in which you can listen to it recreational, but like you're so into this technical part of it and into the arrangement that it's really hard to actually enjoy it and like let the music do its work, you know? So yeah, you put it on your phone and you go for a bike ride or something, and that helps for me, like driving around on Tempelhof, for example. Like I go almost every day for a drive, and then I can actually listen to it, you know? Like in the 60s or something, they recorded the band all at once, and it wasn't perfect, you know. Some people were incredibly off time, but then I think the attention was going to getting the best take with the best atmosphere. And now what they do is do every take 100 times, and they take the one that's technically perfect, you know. So everything is perfectly timed, and that kind of takes away the whole love and the whole energy you create when you play together. And this is also, even though you do it on your own, when you're kind of jamming on your synth with a drum loop or something, or you're having a few machines running, you also have like these moments that you're really, really in the moment, and there's good energy in that take. And then I'm more perfectionistic in wanting like the best atmosphere than having it technically perfect. And especially with like certain types of house music, I think it fits that it's a bit rough, you know. It needs to be a bit rough. Or like I've thought about it a lot. I don't know why, but for me it doesn't work when it's too polished production-wise. Whenever I finish the session, I have to render it. And sometimes the arrangement is not there, and I just make an arrangement quickly and I render it, so I don't have to go into the project anymore, and I can put it on my phone, for example. And after that I just, like, you know, the next morning you wake up and you listen to it, and I guess then pretty quickly, like, you realize, or at least you think you realize, which tracks are better and which are not, and you take them out and you put them in the selection or something like that. And then you might have to go back a few weeks later to review what you did. But yeah, that selection it got easier than it used to be, and I have a good, like, feedback group of friends that are also producing that I can really trust, you know. And if they say it's not good, then it's not good. If they say it's good, then I trust them more than I trust myself. And I spoke to quite a lot of producers, and they'll, I think most of them say, like, oh, it's always the track that I just made, like, in the train in 10 minutes, and then the track that you sit on for a month and it's super frustrating, and you really want it to come up be perfect. So let's say the labels never pick it, and they're right, usually, because it doesn't have this energy, you know? You take all of the originality out of it or something, you kind of over-analyze and over-produce it in a way. But at least that's how it works for me. And like working with labels that you trust or that you respect, for me helps a lot, because if they choose something, then I trust them, you know? I think I'm kind of a daytime producer, yeah. And I find like that I make most of my music in the stolen moments, you know? Like being hangover in the train or on a Sunday, and on moments that I really don't expect to make anything, usually the best stuff also happens. I'm not someone to sit until 3, 4 at night and to make music, even though I enjoy doing that, but for me it's better to kind of keep a normal schedule, feel that I'm still a part of like the everyday world or something. A lot of times I'm playing live a lot, so I usually have some gear with me, but when I'm in the train obviously not. But there's like, I have a lot of renders of like takes I did before that are already processed, and samples, and actually some really good plugins as well. Like, and it's not that I only want to use this, there's some amazing software that I love to use and that I'm sure no one would be able to tell the difference. So it's definitely possible to do some stuff on the road, but in the end of the day, I come here and then I hear it and like maybe the basic mix is good, and then I get it through my machines, because that's also what makes my sounds, you know? It's a combination of how I work, but also of a certain combination of machines that create like kind of more of a signature sound. And you can do that with using certain plugins in a certain way, but for me it's